I first became a tribute artist November 2014. I just basically did a show. My friend said I sounded a bit like Elvis, you should do a show, so I did it, and we sort of took off from there.
When you were a fan to begin with, it wasn't just like somebody said you sound like Elvis, it was just singing. You already listened to Elvis?
Yeah, that's right. I listened to Elvis when since I was 16. I remember watching Walk the Line, and out of that whole movie, the whole Johnny Cash movie, Elvis was the one that stuck out. He was in there for 2 seconds and playing, That's Alright Mama and Milk Cow Blues Boogie and things like that, and I just thought I've got to see what this guy, what he's all about.
Well, as a young child, I was just mesmerized by the '68 comeback special. Came out in the black leather, all the women went crazy, and from that moment I was hooked, man, and absolutely love the music.
Well, I guess my dad, we were at a radio remote station, and they were doing a remote, and the guy, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old maybe, and he asked me, he goes, "Would you like a record, son?" And my dad goes, "Yeah, just give him something that sounds like Elvis." It was actually a Conway Twitty record, and but I remembered hearing his name, and so I asked Mom if she'd get me an Elvis record. So we went to the store and got a bunch of Elvis records, and that was it. And I saw him live in 1977 in Norman, Oklahoma.
Wow, what was that show like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I remember it as like it was yesterday. The things I remember were his voice and how powerful it was. And I remember J.D. Sumner doing the big bass drop on that. And then, of course, we went into the medley of Jailhouse Rock and everything. And yeah, I'm so glad I got to see him.
I was 2 years old. My grandma sat me down in front of a TV and put in Follow That Dream, an Elvis movie. And I was mesmerized by it. I wouldn't stop, for nothing. And I stopped for that. So it just snowballed from there, and I've been doing it ever since.
I was a fan of Elvis when I was 4 years old. My auntie got me into it. She was looking after me one day and it was raining outside, so she made me sit down and watch a film, and it was King Creole. And that's how I became an Elvis fan.
First time I became an Elvis fan, I saw Elvis in Turner Classic Movies. And first thing I thought, man, great hair. And he became a huge impact on my life. And I just love the way, how when he sang a song, everybody always felt like he was singing to them and stuff like that. So I was just hooked at 6 years old on Turner Classic Movies.
Oh, everything started when I was a little kid and listened to my father's records, and since then I couldn't stop to listen to Elvis almost every day in my life.
It happened pretty much when I was a baby. I mean, my mom said that she would play his records, and if she played love songs, it would kind of rock me to sleep, and if she played fast songs, it would get my energy up. And so since I was a little boy, I've always recognized Elvis's voice. I was about not quite 3 when he passed away, and I can actually still remember that day because I remember my family, the reaction, especially from my mother, going, "Oh my God, Elvis is dead," and I think it just left an imprint on me. And I still remember as a little boy, I could have been more than 3 or 4, and hearing him overhead, like in a Kmart or something, and recognizing it was Elvis, and asked my mom, "Is that Elvis?" She goes, "Yeah, that's Elvis." She thought it was strange that I could recognize his voice more than anybody. And so since I was a little boy, I just loved Elvis, and I still do. I just, that hasn't gone away. In fact, the more I learn about him and his struggles, and his career, his ups and his downs, the more I'm just amazed by him. For someone to take on as much as he did, to work as hard as he did, it's just phenomenal. That's why he's still my hero.
Well, actually, our family, we used to travel as a gospel group. And so ever since I was about 4 years old, something like that, I was singing with our family. And we used to travel all over the country, all over the world actually, singing gospel music. And then I kind of quit around the time when a young guy's voice starts changing, And I sang a couple times then, and it was real crackly and going up and down and that kind of stuff. So I quit for a few years, and then when I was about 20, 21, something like that, I actually ran into a guy named Terry Mike Jeffrey. And we kind of bonded as friends over some Elvis stuff, and he found out I used to sing, and he kind of got me back doing some more of it, and it just started going from there, and that's been 20-some years ago, and been doing it ever since.
When and how did you first become an Elvis fan?
I think I was always kind of aware of Elvis. Like I said, when we used to travel and do gospel music, of course, Elvis was huge into gospel music. And I would even hear Dad tell some stories of a few encounters, not with Elvis, but with people that worked for Elvis. And so I was kind of aware of it. But when I was, let's see, I would have been about 8 years old in '77, and we were doing a show up in Michigan, Mackinac City, Michigan, and kind of a Branson-style show. Our family was doing one up there. And during the afternoons, my dad would run out and do appearances at little cafes or that, trying to promote the show that we had that night. And he came home and or came back to the show that night. And I remember him walking in the door, and I was just sitting over, probably playing with a toy or something. But I heard him say to Mom, "Did you hear that Elvis Presley passed away?" And even though I didn't really grasp the enormity of what that meant, I knew it was something very significant. And that night after our show, I remember sitting up and listening to the radio just for hours and hours, and they just played constant Elvis music back to back. And from that time on, I've just always been an Elvis fan. You know, I was aware of him before, and then once he passed away, I really, really got into it more. Of course, I was, you know, young at that time, but and as I grew up, I really started to respect the talent that he had.
My grandmother, she immigrated from Holland to Canada in the 50s. She didn't speak a word of English. She loved Elvis, and she passed that on to me.
I became an Elvis fan when I was about 12 years old. I was watching the movies. They used to play the movies on Saturday morning TV in London, in England, and I first got into Elvis watching the movies. I loved the movies. The music was fun. The films were easy and, you know, just enjoyable. And I grew up watching movies, and that's why I love the Elvis movies so much, because it reminds me of my childhood.
Fan. I was an Elvis fan right from as far back as I can remember. I used to watch his movies, and yeah, he was always kind of like the hero in the movies, and I identified with something, and I used to watch his films when I was a kid, and then also I used to listen to my parents were Elvis fans, and they used to play the Loving You soundtrack and stuff they had on vinyl, and yeah, so kind of all my life really been an Elvis fan. Yeah.
When I was a young kid, my parents were divorced. I would go and visit my dad on the weekends, and he would pull up, and I'd be sitting out on the front steps of our house waiting for my dad. And as soon as I get in my dad's car, he would have the 8-track cassette playing of Elvis, and you know, In the Ghetto and Moody Blue, you know, all those different kinds of songs, man. And we would just listen to Elvis the whole way to my dad's house. Oldies, you know, but mostly all Elvis. And to my dad's on Saturday morning, and then on Sunday night when I was on my way home, we listened to Elvis. So, man, I remember as I got home, I would just think about my dad, of course, because I missed my dad, and of course I would relate Elvis to my father. A little bit later on, I wound up getting a bunch of cassettes, and I had a stereo, and I had the speakers all around the head of my bed, like I nailed them in the wall. So when I laid down, my head was on the pillow, and I had speakers around my head. And I would just play Elvis every single night. I mean, I would hit play on the cassette, on side A of the cassette. I would fall asleep, and the cassette would come off by itself. The following night, I'd flip the cassette over to side B. I'd play side B. And night after night, my whole childhood, I'd listen to Elvis. Through thick and thin, man, through ups and downs, through whatever, man. I always had Elvis. And when my dad wasn't there, I had Elvis to listen to.